Welcome to this presentation on assessing your capital construction management. This is designed specifically for owners that are looking to evaluate their processes and technology for improving their overall program performance. Here are some of the steps that we're going to actually go through that will help you during your assessment process. The first step is you want to evaluate each of the different stakeholders and roles in your organization. What are their responsibilities? What are their cares? What are their goals? What are the different processes that are involved in exchanging information between each of these stakeholders? And what's really important here is that you first start within your own organization, and then you potentially map out how you touch others in your organization, such as the end stakeholders or users of your facilities, or then also looking to how you have processes and touch points with your external contractors, or even in working with your design teams. Another important part of this process is first evaluating who are going to be the decision makers in your organization. Is it going to be directors and VPs that will be approving budgets for purchasing any new software, implementing training, or doing any major organizational changes or shifts? Then who in your project staff are going to be the champions and facilitators of implementing a new software or a change in process? And then coordinating with your IT and project controls group to make sure that any software or solution that you choose is going to be secure, within compliance, and has the ability to exchange data with other software applications and technology solutions in your organization. Once you've mapped out your organization and the different stakeholders involved, you'll start to look at the processes and connection points between each of those stakeholders. And then what you'll want to do is map out what are the challenges or the pain points or breakdowns in your organization that are causing some of the cost overruns, schedule delays, or even quality deficiencies in the facilities that your organization is constructing. And a lot of times what we'll hear, the first big pain point is, where are we? And we hear this from executives in owner organizations that say, I don't have really good real-time measurement of exactly where we are at with cost on our projects, our cash flow, so I can coordinate with finance. Are we on schedule? And if we aren't, how do I know where the problems are, and how do I stop that from happening again? And so a lot of the times the next phase down that contributes to this is that each of their PMs are managing things in their own Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. They're doing things differently in their processes from one project to another. So you can't really evenly measure the success of one project and the failure of another. And then oftentimes paper is still a big part of processes, including payment approvals or change requests and change order approvals. And so what happens here is you don't really have visibility of exactly whose desk or where or how long things are taking when they're moving from one stakeholder to another in a process. And then also what you'll hear is that project managers get a long laundry list of change orders that will come up, late in the construction process and late in the project life cycle. The project manager didn't have funding readily available or put together in his forecast for that. He then has to go to finance and say, hey, I need some extra money here that I wasn't really anticipating. And then things may get compressed, and errors and mistakes may happen in doing save as on Word documents, and it gets rejected by finance, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what you'll want to evaluate is, starting at the top strategic goals and then looking at each of the processes where breakdowns happen. And then what are the negative repercussions? What are the actual empirical data or the things that go wrong, and what are the repercussions of those things going wrong in your organization? And so ultimately, some of the story I told you there before was that oftentimes an issue will come up. It may not be recognized because there's a lack of measurement and kind of standardization in processes. So a PM may not catch something or may not react to it or may not have visibility into the impact of a decision that they're going to make that can cause the project to be late, can be over budget, and then also potentially jeopardize or delaying the generation of revenue from the facility. And this is really troubling for executives because they can't see this information until the end, and then it's hard to correct course once you're towards the end of a project. And then looking at this to prevent those problems on the next project. And so you really want to evaluate each of the processes and where you may be missing measurement information or where things may be going wrong. Now that you've taken a look at some of the problems and risks in your organization, the next step is to start mapping out some solutions. This may include changing some of your processes, implementing training, changing personnel, or even implementing a new software solution in your organization. Let's go through some examples. The first thing is that you may ideally want to have real-time program performance measurement, whether this is reports and dashboards, but you're ultimately looking to find things proactively when they're small before they ripple effect and turn into a huge negative impact. Then you're also wanting to have integrated cost management. So that way you can look at funding, budget, cost and commitments, and even have real-time forecasting at the individual project level, as well as wrapping that up into your program level. You also want to be able to consolidate documents consistently across your projects in one central location. You'll have all of your documents automatically versioned, so you're working with the latest and greatest information. You want each of your project managers to be consistently executing processes such as change orders, payments, RFIs, with each of their design teams and contractors consistently, so that way information can be measured on each project at a program level. And then you want to be able to set up your schedules and have key milestones that match the design and contractor teams, and being able to look at dependencies and any cost impacts if things go off plan. Now, if you find that implementing a new software is a part of your solutions, when you go out to the market, you're going to want to look for something that will fit you specifically as an owner versus, say, a contractor. So you're ultimately looking for a program management solution versus an individual project management solution. Contractors are a bit different in that they're executing everything pretty much on a project level and working for a variety of different owners, and then they're managing their subcontractors in a detailed way. As an owner, you're looking at a variety of projects that you have, and you're tying cost, staff, and schedule together at a program level. And you're working more closely with your end stakeholders and your finance group. And you're planning and prioritizing things based on the strategic goals of your organization. So when you go out to the market, you're going to want to look at a software vendor as well as solution that's experienced in your space and that's designed specifically and can be configured specifically to your processes. So let's build on that and go into integrated cost management specifically from an owner's point of view. You set up your budget of your construction program, which is going to be comprised of multiple projects to meet your strategic goals. Then you're going to look at potentially a variety of different funding sources that are going to help you execute that construction program. You then start to create detailed plans of the individual projects and potentially hold a contingency for any surprises, unknowns, or waste that may actually happen during the design and construction process. Now, what happens here and that an owner is ultimately looking for is that they have each of these projects and they want to understand at real time and as early as possible, are there potentially unused funds or uncommitted funds on certain projects that could potentially be moved or used to other projects that need it, that have changes or have cost overruns. And they want to be able to look at that before having to dip into the contingency. And are there ways that you've looked at your processes and some of the bottlenecks that you have right now that are causing waste and cost overruns that are eating into your contingency? Through software, can you actually automate and remove some of those problems and then ultimately take those unused funds, some of those savings, and then put that back into another project which would help improve you reaching your strategic goals? Then let's look a little bit deeper into gaining consistency across your projects, which will then help you to get program level measurement. And the existing process today in a lot of owner organizations is that there's a variety of different softwares or disconnected Excel spreadsheets and documents. There's multiple versions of these files. They're all being sent back and forth via email or put some on FTP sites, some on file servers, some in file sharing services. And you really have no visibility to exactly who or where or how long things are taking to pass back and forth through your process. And a lot of times when you have multiple Word documents, you're doing save as's and you're filling in or you forget to change some information or you leave some information out. And this document can go through a week of different approval stakeholders and then be rejected by finance, and then it has to start all over again. So again, this is kind of the broken down, disconnected process that you have today, which doesn't allow you to get accurate measurement and creates a lot of delays and negative impacts. But if you compare that to the ideal solution for an owner, is that you can actually easily configure and lay out your process within your software and say, who are the different stakeholders, what permissions do they have, what information do they actually need to fill before it can go to the next stakeholder in the process, and put that if-then logic inside of your workflows, actually measure and know who, what, and where, and when, and how long things were taking from moving from one stage to another, and then actually tying this information to your costs and updating, especially if there's a payment invoice or if there's a change order request that actually matures into a change order. And so you ultimately want to be inputting things into forms rather than separate documents, so that way information and the data that's input there can consistently be done by each project manager and then automatically be routed into dashboards and reports that executives can review and make sure that they find issues before they become big problems. Now, once you've mapped out the potential solutions, you're going to want to look at the ROI of enacting those solutions compared to staying where you're at now. And so let's say with the software example, you may be looking at what is your existing contingency or your cost overruns and spend that you have now that you already have budget for. And then you look at implementing a software or doing training or a change in processes, and what's the scale of that cost compared to the waste or the contingency that you have today. And if you start to evaluate the empirical numbers of that, you'll want to say, okay, well, look, maybe I'm setting aside 10% of my budget, which out of a $100 million budget, that's $10 million. If I can shave off 4% of that, I'm looking at a $4 million savings versus what I'm spending and already have budgeted today. If I then look at the cost of implementing and paying for the actual software that might be involved in helping me achieve those savings, I can see here that there's a clear cut decision that, hey, if I don't do anything, it's going to cost me more than actually making the change. And so when you build on that and come up with the actual ROI that helps justify or contribute to those savings, you start to look at those bottlenecks and challenges that you had in your processes, which were causing the ripple effects, things that were contributing to delays or costs. And if you can automate or reduce errors as well as improve the cycle times or the iterations or the number of days it takes for each of those processes to go through, then ultimately you're contributing to those savings. And then you can actually evaluate your staff and you say that, hey, let's say that I know that I'm scaling up our construction budget over the next 2 years. How do we consistently scale up or hire new staff, or how many new staff do we need to hire? And if you have more productivity coming from automation as well as building in your logic and controls in your processes, now you're able to manage more construction dollars with the same amount of staff. So again, you're looking at the ROI of, do I hire new staff and have the risk of making sure I can consistently train them, or do I try to do an implementation with software and then that can maybe help make my existing staff more productive? And ultimately, you're looking for something that's going to create the key benefits to you. You're looking for consistency across your program and your projects. You're looking for predictability, especially on cost and through forecasting. You want to have transparency into each of the processes so that way you know where things are, where the bottlenecks are happening, and how you can correct course. And you're creating accountability really for each of the key stakeholders that you mapped out in your organization. Now that you've done some ROI analysis that validates some of your solutions, the next step is to map out the road to success. Now, the first thing I suggest to do is actually to reach out to other owner organizations similar to yourself that have maybe implemented a software that you're looking at, or that have done training or changes in personnel or changes in process. You're going to want to look at the strategies that they used that were successful, as well as potentially avoiding the pitfalls that they ran into. Now, if you're implementing a new software, essentially you're going to want to be looking for someone that is a trusted partner or that has people that have worked in your industry and they understand your processes, especially specifically as an owner. And not only are they going to provide you great features and a great dependable product, but you know that they're going to help you in configuring the product and getting it up and rolling to be successful in your organization. If you're a capital construction program owner that's facing some of these challenges, then I invite you to reach out to one of our solution executives. They'll go through the assessment process with you and find the right solution, evaluate the ROI, as well as put together a successful implementation path that's going to help enable you to reach top program performance.